that the origin of Halloween is built on devil worship, Wiccans and Satanists. And they, on 31st of October, they actually worship Satan. Around the same time, you have Guy Fawkes night as well. Why not, venerate the saints instead? But still they kept some things along with that, like trick-and-treating, for example, the candy elements, all the kind of, people might think as innocent things, jack-o'-lantern, wearing a goblin mask, whatever. And aliens have come to earth. But these things mean things for the ones who worship Shaytan. Allah says that Shaytan is to you an enemy. So take him as an enemy. And I will speak about, although the talk is about Halloween, the main horror happening in real life in the world is what's happening to our brothers and sisters in Gaza. That is the real horror that the world is exposed to, that we're exposed to in our world today. And it would be really incorrect for me to speak only about my topic of Halloween without, of course, speaking first about what's happening to the Muslims of Gaza. Now, Halloween, of course, is this thing that developed over time, partly through myth and partly through legend. But what's happening in Gaza is real life, a real life horror, real life bombardment of a people. Halloween has its roots from what's called Samhain, pronounced Samhain. And really the origin of Samhain or Samhain is from Celtic Druidic culture. The Celts, in fact, were Europeans who migrated into England, and they settled in places like Wales and Scotland and Ireland. The Druids were like the priestly class of the Celts. They were like the upper echelons of the Celtic people. And they believed that Samhain, was the Lord or the God of death. The God of death was Samhain, or the Lord of death. And they believed that October the 31st was the end of the year, because what emerges on November the 1st would be the beginning of the winter months, the dark months. So all the bright months have come to an end, the dark months are appearing, and in preparation for the dark months, there's a specific evening, specific day, when that Lord of death roams around the world. And all souls of all people who have died in a kind of a metaphysic sense, spirits resurrect. And they have one day, one evening, to roam around the world, these souls, with Samhain or the Lord of Death, and they roam around the world. Ancestors, people's ancestors, fathers, grandfathers, mothers, all old people have died before, they come back and they roam around the world. And so they began, therefore, to believe that since this is happening, the way to protect yourself from these demons, specters of dead people who have already died, is to dress like a goblin and a ghost and demon yourself. If you dress like a goblin and a demon and a ghost, then they wouldn't know who's who. Like the devils, the resurrected dead people wouldn't know that the person dressed as a demon is in fact real or not. Then they wouldn't harm you. And so dressing up, wearing ghastly, goosely images on oneself, that's the origin of it. To protect yourself from the devil. Because the devil, the Satan, Samhain, the Lord of the Dead, was there on that night. And if you dress yourself as a devil, then you would protect yourself because you look like a devil yourself. And so all these young kids, young people, began to dress themselves in all this crazy stuff as a source of protection for them. Other people in the village, they began to light fires. Right? They became known later on as bonfires. And the reason that the person behind the fire was because the fire was seen as a source of protection. And it could protect you from the devil. So you would light fires in villages, in parks, whatever, And the big fire, the bonfire, again was seen as a source of protection. Other people, the beginning of trick-and-treating was that they would in fact leave food outside their homes as offerings to the devil. So they wouldn't open doors, they would stay inside and then they would leave the food outside the house. So when these devils, these ancestors of dead people are coming back, they wouldn't trouble them because they're actually they have food there prepared for them as offerings. So if you put all these things together, what's happening? That the origin of Halloween, Samhain or Samhain is built on devil worship. Is built on the fact that they believe that the Lord of the dead, the God of the dead, Samhain, was coming back on that night. They believe that all dead people, ancestors, would have this metaphysical resurrection of spirits, and that people would seek protection from them by emulating them. Therefore, the way that you would save yourself from the devil is by being a devil. How you would save yourself from the devil is by looking like the devil. So protection for you. And other people, they would seek protection through fire, the bonfires, and these things. As time progressed, you had this thing called the jack-o'-lantern. Jack-o'-lantern. That's where the pumpkin emerges from. The turnip becomes a pumpkin. And that is that they believe inside the pumpkin is a candle. That light is representative light. And they believe in their story, in their fictitious story, that there's a person called Jack. And Jack was, he is a wandering soul. Like he's in what's called purgatory, between heaven and hell in Christianity. And he is thrown out. So he's thrown out and he uses a light as a protection, as a medium for him to wander around the earth. The light is placed inside of a pumpkin as a protection for Jack. So the devil, therefore, is battling against Jack, who can't get into hellfire because doors are shut for him, but he's thrown a coal, and the light is represented through the coal. The coal represents the light. All of these are fictitious stories that develop over time by people. But that's the origin of pumpkin. They place it on a turnip became a pumpkin, and people, of course, they still do it today. They have the pumpkin and they make horrible faces on it, and they put a light inside of the pumpkin. So all these stories of Halloween, and by the way, it's called Halloween because Hallows Eve. So in 732, Pope Gregory III, as Christianity was now emerging in the Roman Empire, and paganism was kind of, losing its appeal because of conversion Christianity, what had happened is that he said that what we'll do is that since we have a saint day, every day is celebrating a saint, worshipping a saint, venerating a saint, on that day, on Halloween's day, we'll have all the saints together and call it All Saints Day. So Hallow means saint. All Saints Day is Hallows Eve, like Saints Evening. Halloween is from All Saints Day. So instead of worshipping the devil and being immersed in all this kind of idolatry, why not venerate the saints instead? But still they kept some things along with that, like trick and treating, for example, the candy elements, all the kind of what you might seem to be the fun stuff. The main thing is, my dear brothers, is that these are things not from our tradition, not from Islam. There is no divine origin behind any of these things I'm just telling you. They all emerge from Celtic, Druidic, pagan culture. They originate this for people. Began to worship this, worship that, introduce this, introduce that, and then people, of course, over time, they began to emulate, copy it. Like, for example, now people have Christmas trees on Christmas. or they have Easter eggs on Easter. But one of the things that people ignore in all of this is the effective functioning of Shaytan. The effective functioning of Shaytan in misleading people, using these kind of icons and codes and symbols. You know, you have today people called the Wiccans and Satanists. And they, on what they call Halloween, 31st of October, they actually worship Satan. So when you think about like people with Shaytan, they actually worship Shaytan. They worship the devil on that specific day. In fact, one of the reports, one of the witches said that, she thanked Christians for being out there dressed as goblins, because that's the day that we actually worship the devil, our God himself. So all of these things are representative of what? Of, on the one hand, in its basic framing, dalala, error, misguidance. So the first lesson for all of us is not to undermine, right, the potential of Shaytan to mislead people. Not to undermine that. Who is Shaytan? Who is Satan? You know, when Allah created Adam alayhi salam, and Allah said to the angels, bow down. Usjudu li Adam. This is a bowing of veneration to Adam for Allah's sake, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah says that all of them bowed, illa Iblis, Aba wa Stakbara. Allah says all bowed except Iblis, Aba. He refused, was Stakbara, and he was arrogant, and he was of the kafirin, of the disbelievers. And you have this repeated in the Quran, different places. Allah is mentioning the same story in different ways. That in this grand setting, Allah commanded all the angels, right, everyone, the jinn, bow. And they all bowed except Iblis. So Iblis therefore represents a state, a being. And that he says to Allah, why would I bow to him? أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. You create me from fire, I made him from clay, and I'm better than him. A state of arrogance, of pride, of refusal, denial to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah says to Iblis, Shaytan, that you're now rejected. Not in seeking Allah's clemency, mercy out of his error. He says instead to Allah, قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي. Blame, because you've misled me, O Allah, I lie in ambush for your servants on your straight path. Ala siratak al-mustaqim, on your straight path. This is why the ulama, they say that, look, when Allah in the Quran says that He will say to Allah, I lie in your straight path, that means that there is a pressing need. Never think to yourself, I'm so pious that Shaytan can't affect me. Because in that you're allowing some kind of an opening, even in the state of being away from humility, an opening from arrogance and pride, that Shaytan can have an opening in you. Never to feel as if you're safe. Why would the Prophet, like the beautiful Imam recited in the Salah right now, the Prophet would say again and again, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. Oh, the one turns the heart towards your religion. Because the heart is always exposed. And in the Quran you find this repeated. The main tragedy of man is to do with his heart. When the heart is astray, man is astray. Allah says when they turn away, Allah turn their hearts away. If the heart goes astray, man is astray. In the hadith, there is a lump of flesh in the body. If it's sound, all body is sound. If it's corrupt, all body is corrupt. Ala wahi al-qalb, indeed that's the heart. So if the heart is in a good state, everything is good state. But if the heart is corrupt, everything else is corrupt. So that's the first primary source of error is from the heart. And Shaytan says to Allah, I'll lie in ambush for them on your straight path. ثُمَّ لَأَتْيَنَّهُمْ. then I will come at them from before them and from behind them, and from the right and from the left. And you will not find most people to be grateful and thankful to you. So if you imagine, therefore, Shaytan will assault upon us as Allah's creation, from the right, from the left. The ulama, they say not from the top, because that's where Allah's mercy is, rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not from the top, but from the right, from the left, from front, from behind, assailing people, assaulting people in different ways and forms, and using trickery and this and that. That's Shaytan's role, function and purpose. So if you imagine, therefore, everybody, Shaytan, he refused one prostration to Allah when Allah commanded him out of arrogance and pride, racism. And his whole functioning, therefore, is to ensure that all of us lose that, to make prostration to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That one sajda you make to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala foils the plan of Shaytan in so many ways and functions. And you become such a detriment to Shaytan because your influence. When Allah says to Maryam, Ya Maryam, uqnuti li rabbiki wasjudi warka'i marraqin. Maryam, be devout to your Lord and bow and prostrate and bow with those who bow, bowing with those who bow. Like this is a masjid and people bow with those who bow. So your influence affects his influence, affects him, and you affect him. And your spiritual vibe coming through is effective in all of you. That's very counterproductive to Shaytan's plan and aim for what he wants to achieve. لَأَغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. He said, I will lead all of them astray. إِلَّا عِبَادُكَ مِنْهُمْ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Except those of your servants who are select, mukhlasin, the select one, chosen ones. And the ulama say they're chosen because of their ikhlas. They select on account of their ikhlas. Except for those ones, but he will have a way with people. Therefore, not to underestimate the potential of Shaytan working around us. Ibn Jawzi rahimahullah says that Shaytan, what does he do? He calls all of us to make kufr with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shirk billah. That's his first main thing. That you die as a disbeliever. As a kafir billah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's his main function. His main aim. Yeah, he wants you to die in disbelief. I had a call with someone just 2 weeks ago. The man, Allah save all, the man became Muslim. He was a Jew, becomes Muslim. COVID happens, and in that COVID time, he began to, listen to different podcasts and this and that. And so one of the people he's listening to is a person who says that there are aliens. And aliens have come to Earth. And so he begins to think, okay, well, aliens come to Earth. Maybe all these Islamic things are to do with aliens and crazy stuff. So I said to him, brother, you embrace Islam with yaqeen, with certainty. Why are you moving away based upon doubts and conjecture and hypothesis and could be? Shaytan will have his way, will make an opening in somebody and then exploit it. And exploit it meaning manipulate a person's state. This is why the believer has to be on guard and move away from all things that are detrimental to his faith. Especially those things that have Shaytan, the devil, in the middle of all of them. Nowadays, you have these Wiccans, they rely on things like numerology and symbolism. So when we think about what you might think, people might think as innocent things, in trick-or-treating or like wearing a goblin mask, whatever. But these things mean things for the ones who worship Shaytan. Like they have some kind of symbolic significance. have a potential and a power to mislead people. This is why, Allah in the Quran says, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًّا إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ حِزْبُهُ لِيَكُونُوا مِنْ أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. Allah says that Shaytan is to you an enemy. فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًّا. So take him as an enemy. At the place in the Quran, Allah says he is عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ, an open, clear enemy. So if you imagine therefore what's happening now in Gaza, and the bombardment, and the horror, but you also have the shayateen of the jinn. That's in some ways the purpose behind this talk. Because there's an assault of this enmity, devilish enmity, on the Muslim mind, on the Muslim heart, from the devils of the humans and the devil of the jinn. And they're both working together. And so therefore, point number one, therefore, like I mentioned, is not to underestimate. Don't treat that lightly. We say all the time, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, for a purpose. I seek refuge to Allah from Shaytan, the accursed one. فإذا قرأت القرآن فاستعذ بالله. Allah says you recite Quran and you seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وإما ينزغنك من الشيطان نزغ فاستعذ بالله. When Shaytan seeks corruption in people, then Allah says seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At so many points in the Quran, Allah is saying, if this happens, seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, say to my servants, speak what is ahsan. Inna shaytan yanzaghu baynahum. Inna shaytan. Allah says Shaytan, he yanzaghu baynahum. He puts something between people. Like conflict, discord, friction between people. He makes it happen. Shaytan does that. In Surah Yusuf, when you have this whole course of events in Surah Yusuf. But what's at the beginning, what is Yaqub telling his son Yusuf alayhi salam? He says, okay, don't tell your brothers a dream because they'll plan against you. But Shaytan will capitalize on things. So if Shaytan would do that, what happens at the end of Surah Yusuf when the whole point of reconciliation happens? The brothers, they come to Yusuf. Yusuf sees them. They're amazed. قالوا إنك لأنت يوسف. Are you Yusuf? أنا يوسف وهذا أخي. I am Yusuf, my brother. This is my brother. And Allah favored us. And after he says that Allah brought us together after Shaytan sowed corruption between us. Meaning Shaytan did that to us and Allah brought us together. Meaning the main culprit in this all is Shaytan. Even though they share a human responsibility of doing bad to their brother, but the impetus behind it is Shaytan. And so therefore that's the first lesson. Beware of Shaytan's influences. Number two, in all these things about Samhain being the Lord of Death, and because you have the Lord of Death, you have to give an offering through sweets or food and leave it there. To appease what? To appease the Lord of Death. Allah in the Quran tells us again not to undermine the importance of death. It's not a joke. Allah says in the Quran about the person who is, when he's dying, this is a person now, he's going to die. وَقِيلَ مَنْ رَاقٍ. And it said, who can cure this person? Heal this person. وَظَنَّ أَنَّهُ الْفِرَاقِ. But the person who is dying knows this is a time of firaq, separation. Everything that held him onto the dunya, his estate, his family, his love of things, everything, firaq, separation. وَالْتَفَّتِ السَّاقُ بِالسَّاقِ. And one leg is joined with the other leg. إِلَى رَبِّكَ. And Allah says, to your Lord, يَوْمَ إِذٍ. Allah says on that day, the journey is, the masaq is to Allah. the person is dying. But Allah says about him, this person who's dying is dead. فَلَا صَدَّقَ وَلَا صَلَّى. He didn't believe truly, and nor did he pray salah. وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. But he denied and turned away. ثُمَّ ذَهَبَ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ تَمَطَّى. Then he goes to his family full of conceit. But Allah says about this person twice, أَوْلَكَ فَأُولَى. Woe to you and woe to you. ثُمَّ أَوْلَى لَكَ فَأَوْلَى. And then again woe to you, then again woe to you. This is the only place in the whole Quran when Allah does this. About the person who had a chance in life, but through death and is passing on a person, it's all gone for him. Therefore, don't treat this as something that is light, it's real. The Prophet was with his companions, and he saw another group in the distance digging, doing something. He asked the first group, what are they doing over there? And they said, they're digging a grave, Ya Rasulullah. And so he hurried ahead of them, went to them, knelt by the grave, began to weep, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and said, "Ey ikhwani limithli hada al-yawm fa'iddu." My brothers, for a day like this, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself for the day that you will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything you do is for that day, is for tomorrow. لِغَدْ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. So all of these things, they trivialize the importance of your passing, of death. Because they make it seem as if, it's some kind of a fun thing. It's a real thing. Sakaratul Maut is a real thing. The pangs of death are a real thing. We all are exposed every single day of our lives to an exposition of temporality. We see in us, wallahi, we're seeing in us every day. This is why they say that when Allah says that the Nadir has come, the warner has come. Some ulama, they say the warner is the grey hair, white hair. That's the warner. And we see this happening every single day. We're seeing these alterations in the human body, the human framing, disabilities and weaknesses, and aging process. And you realize, subhanAllah, this is not how it was yesterday. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامِ. Allah says, and those are days, we alter people. This is why when a person, Allah in the Quran says, when he reaches 40 sana, 40 years, and he says, Rabbi awzi'ni an ashkura ni'matak. My Lord, inspire me to thank you for what you blessed me and my parents with. وَنَعْمَلَ صَالًا تَرْضَاهُ وَأَصْلِحْ لِي فِي ذُرِيَّتِي إِنِّي تُبْتُ إِلَيْكَ وَإِنِّي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And let me do good deeds you're pleased with. And bless me and my progeny. I'm repentant to you and I'm one of the Muslims. That's a reflective state, because he's realizing, now I'm at the point where I'm actually going that way in life. Therefore, prepare yourself. One of my very close friends passed away about 6 years ago now. Very close friend, subhanAllah. This is a brother, we used to travel together to give da'wah. Up and down the country giving da'wah. This is a brother who used to recite Quran and teach Quran. He was a Quran teacher. So imagine, Quran teacher, and he's giving da'wah. And then I went to see him on the day before he died. And on the day before he died, he said to me, Uthman, he said, he says, what is there? Except worship Allah alone and make no partners and be good to your parents. And I thought, subhanAllah, I thought you, as a person with all that knowledge, and the Quran and this and that, but you've encapsulated, summarized the most important things in life. Worship Allah alone, make no partners, and be good to your parents. He says that that's kind of like, that's the main thing I'm realizing. And the day he died, we were speaking to family, and they said that the doctor came to him like an hour before, and they said to him, in Urdu, they said, they said to him in Urdu, tiyari karo, like prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. Like prepare yourself, because that's the end of the road. So therefore, the lesson is not to undermine. On the one hand, of course, you have these fictitious things happening, and they're trivialized, but you don't trivialize something as important as the finality of life, which is, of course, death. And number two was not to undermine Shaytan's potential. Now remember, of course, and this is the third thing, when you have the lighting of bonfires, and it was originally, the idea was to protect yourself from these ghosts and demons with the fire, with the light. And they said that because the dark months are coming, the sun is becoming weaker. So because the sun gets weaker, they said, the fire is a way for us to help the sun. As if the sun needs any help except what Allah gave it, of source of energy. But that's what they would say. That's why they would light fires. But Allah is telling us in the Quran that if dur comes to you, فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا هُ, no one can remove calamity from a person except Allah. No one removes the dur, the hardship situation, except Allah. When Ayyub alayhi salam had illness, what did he say? Rabbi anni masni ad-dur wa anta arhamar rahimin. My Lord, you are this affliction has come upon me, has touched me, and you are the most merciful one. So whenever we have a situation, the one that we call upon is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't rely on like these fictitious things that maybe, I know nowadays people don't believe that except those who take it seriously. Like the wearing of the masks, all of it is forbidden. It's all haram in Islam. But the wearing of the masks and the wearing of this and that, in those days they believed that that was a source of protection. If I wear the mask of the goblin, that would save me from the greater consequence of Shaytan. But Allah is saying that we say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ. Oh Allah, your divine aid that we seek. So when you have a situation, you ask Allah. Something painful, you ask Allah. Some affliction, you turn to Allah. We have a thing called dua. Like now in Salah, we were all making dua. Why do we make dua? It's the salahul mu'min, it's the weapon of the believer. What's most beloved to Allah is that his servant turns to him and asks him. So we turn to Allah and ask Allah rather than seeking protection in these fake symbolic codes of a costume or of a mask. These things won't help anybody. They will harm somebody. They will harm a person. Therefore, be wise and attentive. For yourself, we have things like Ayatul Kursi, that helps a person. The 2 ayat at the end of Al-Baqarah, Amna Rasul, they help a person. Surah Ikhlas, Surah Nas, Surah Fatiha help a person. So to save yourself from shaitanic influences, recite these things. Every night, make it a habit. Amna Rasul to Al-Baqarah, recite that every single night without fail. You feel something, make ruqya on yourself. With basic things that you already know, like Al-Fatiha, Ayatul Kursi, Surah Al-Falaq, An-Nas. These were revealed as surahs to save people from shaitanic demonic influences and black magic and jinn and stuff like that. So after every salah, Ayatul Kursi. Morning, evening, Ayatul Kursi. Amna Rasul in the evening, and read your adhkar, your evening and morning adhkar. 3 times in the morning and evening, Bismillah alladhi la yadurru ma'a ismihi shay'un fil ardi wala fis samaa'i alim. Recite them. Make it a habit for yourself. It will keep you in more of a protected state. Then there are other influences like the importance of wudu. If you make wudu, what happens? You're seeking like a purification through the water. But the water itself is not cleansing you except through the permission and will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is that the wudu is a means of purification. Right? If you don't have it, then you just do tayammum. Therefore the sand will purify you. But it's Allah purifies you. But the means, the sand or the water are means of purification. But you're doing that because it's a cleansing state in a person. So remain, therefore, try your best to remain in wudu. You wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, make that a wudu, make a wudu. Then in a state you can pray al-duha, little wudu, you can do things with your life. In that state, wudu, being in a protected state. When you leave your house, you recite your adhkar. What do you say? Say, Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah. Bismillahi tawakkaltu ala Allah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. In the name of Allah, I place my trust in Allah. There's no power and no might except with Allah. And when you say that, what happens? The angels, they say, Hudita, waqita wa kufita wa kama qala. This person is guided, he's safe, he's protected. And the devils, they say, what can we do with a person who is guided, safe and protected? So protection for you. The Prophet ﷺ, in his house, he would cover all utensils and say, Bismillah. So in the night, go to your kitchen every night and check, are your utensils covered? Is there food left uncovered? Water left uncovered? Because if it is, you've got to cover it. And when you cover the food and the water, you say, Bismillah, in the name of Allah. That keeps your house in a protected state. The hadith, whoever enters his home saying Bismillah, Bismillah walajna wa kharajna, there's a dua, you say Bismillah, then Shaytan doesn't come inside your home with you. If you enter your home, Assalamu alaikum to everyone, even if it's an empty house, you're greeting the jinn at the same time, you say Bismillah, the Shaytan doesn't come in the house with you, won't leave with you. So make your mouth, your tongue therefore moist to Allah's remembrance. And remembering Him all the time of the day. So therefore, just a few short piece of advice about the fact that we don't do, of course, Halloween. It's not something in Islam that we practice. It's something from pagan origin, shirki origin, pagan culture. From the Celts and the Druids. And over time, they've just simply added to it and manufactured it. And nowadays, it's kind of commercialized, it's sellable. And America, they spend around $6 billion a year on Halloween merchandise. You imagine that? $6 billion every year on Halloween merchandise. On things, pumpkins, things for the house, lights, goblins, masks, whatever. It's still there. That's a shaitanic influence. We ask Allah save us from all shaitanic influences and keep us away from all things that are hazardous and harmful for us, our hearts and ourselves, and keep us firm upon truth and upon the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and on that way. May Allah save all of us, and may Allah save the Muslims of Gaza, Palestine, and all those who are suffering bombardment. May Allah save them and enjoin upon them victory and success and goodness. Allahumma ameen. Any questions I can? Yeah, bismillah. Diwali is at the same time as Samhain, by the way. The Hindu celebration, festival of light, is same time as Halloween, Diwali. And they call it the festival of light. And they do some things like that to do with importance of light as well. The same is true in Halloween. My advice is just to stay away from this stuff. Stay away from it. Because there is a question mark around it. Nowadays, of course, I know you have around the same time you have Guy Fawkes night as well. But think about that. Guy Fawkes and his band of these rebels were actually Catholics. And they went to Spain, which the Catholics took from the Muslims, to seek help from the Spanish Catholic kings, because all of England was not Catholic at that time. And they would persecute the Catholics. So the Catholic kings of Spain informed the kings of England about these rebels. When they got home, it foiled their plan, because they wanted to assassinate the king of England, James I. They failed in that because they were caught in that, and then they were executed. They were hung, drawn, quartered. That means they would hang them, but not allow them to die fully. Then they would cut them in half. They haven't died fully as yet. Pull the heart out. So there were evil things like that. But that's what happened to the Catholics. They were a persecuted group in England. To celebrate the killing of Guy Fawkes, they have Guy Fawkes Night. They light a bonfire. They have some kind of effigy in the shape of a wood, whatever, of Guy Fawkes, and they let it burn to celebrate that happening. All of these events are nothing to do with our faith or our history, even, or our culture, or anything like that. That's not barakah. There's no blessing, nothing in that. Allah creates your eyes. Allah will let your eyes see much beautiful wonders by His mercy. In Jannah, you'll see much beautiful wonders and spectacles. I'm not saying it's forbidden for you to see it. I don't have any capacity or knowledge to say that, but I'm saying that this is a protective for yourself. I would say that remember Allah instead. Allah will soften your heart more than the firework. Yeah.
Can you celebrate New Year's?
So we don't celebrate such events.
Like if other people like fireworks, can you just see it from your home?
Yeah, so I'm not saying that you can't see fireworks. You can see fireworks, you can not saying that you can't see, but remember that the New Year's are based upon all of the months are named after pagan gods in the past. Yeah, January, February, March, April, whatever, they have a pagan origin behind them. We have our own New Year in Islam. We have our own, and I think that's what we should focus on. Like the Muharram is the beginning of the Islamic New Year. And there is a whole narrative of the Hijrah, migration of prophets, journeying, the struggle in that from the New Year, the beginning month, Muharram, And I think that's where we should place our emphasis, because we can't have two New Years then. If you're living in China, you have a different New Year. They have their own New Year in China. Different months and different things, and they have the dragon and whatever, but we should stick to our tradition,